3 days after the battle, the Galactic Council chamber looked different. The same crystal walls and floating seats remained, but the atmosphere had completely changed. Representatives who had once spoken to humans with casual disregard now watched Ambassador Hyunwoo with careful respect. The holographic display in the center of the chamber showed the aftermath of the battle. Where 13 star systems had once existed, there was now an expanding nebula of colorful gases and radiation. It was beautiful in the way that only cosmic destruction could be beautiful. Council Prime Velthar stood at his platform, but his usual confident manner was gone. His forearms gestured uncertainly as he spoke. The immediate threat has been eliminated. The Void Devourer fleet has been completely destroyed. We owe our survival to human intervention. The words seemed to hurt him as he said them. For centuries, the Zephyrian Empire had considered itself the most advanced military power in the galaxy. Now they had been saved by a species they had thought was primitive. The question before us now, Velthar continued, is how to proceed. We have learned that our understanding of human capabilities was incomplete. Fleet Commander Draktos sat heavily in his chair. His red skin looked pale and his medals seemed less impressive than they had a week ago. Incomplete is a gentle way to put it. We were completely wrong about everything. Ambassador Hyunwoo stood up slowly. He looked the same as always, calm, professional, wearing his simple black suit. But now the aliens watched him like they would watch a loaded weapon. The Galactic Council requested Earth's full military response, he said in the same quiet voice he had used before. Earth provided exactly what was requested. One ship, said the crystalline representative, her voice making sounds like breaking glass. You sent one ship and destroyed an enemy that threatened the entire galaxy. We sent what was necessary. Hive Mind Node Zix leaned forward, its black eyes reflecting the light from the holographic display. The collective has been analyzing the battle data. The resilience absorbed energy equivalent to the total output of 10,000 stars. This should be impossible. Many things seem impossible until someone does them, Hyunwoo replied. But how? Demanded a representative from the Aquatic Federation. How does one ship carry such power? Hyunwoo was quiet for a moment, considering how much to reveal. Finally, he spoke. The resilience was not carrying the power. It was carrying the knowledge of how to use power that was already there. The stars, whispered Council Prime Velthar. You use the stars themselves as weapons. Stars are the most powerful forces in the universe. It seemed logical to use them for defense. The chamber erupted in whispered conversations as the implications sank in. If humans could trigger stellar collapses at will, then every star system was potentially a weapon in their hands. No fleet, no matter how large, could stand against the power of exploding suns. How long has Earth possessed this technology? Asked Velthar. Long enough to know how to use it responsibly. And why was the Galactic Council never informed? Hyunwoo's expression did not change. Would you inform your neighbors that you keep nuclear weapons in your basement? This is different. This technology could revolutionize warfare, energy production, space travel. This technology could destroy the galaxy if used incorrectly. That is why Earth has been very careful about who knows about it. The chamber fell silent as the representatives considered this. They had all assumed that sharing advanced technology was automatic among galactic civilizations. The idea that a species would deliberately hide their most powerful capabilities was disturbing. The doors to the chamber opened, and a new group of humans entered. They walked with the same calm confidence as Hyunwoo, but their presence somehow filled the enormous room. The aliens instinctively moved back in their seats. President So Young, announced Hyunwoo. Admiral Sung Ho, Science Advisor Dong Wook. President So Young was a woman in her 50s with gray hair and tired eyes. She had the look of someone who had made difficult decisions for many years. Admiral Sung Ho was tall and stern, wearing a uniform that looked simple but somehow impressive. Science Advisor Dong Wook was younger, with the eager expression of someone who loved explaining complex ideas. Honored representatives, President So Young said, bowing slightly. Earth regrets that our introduction to the galactic community had to come during a time of crisis. Introduction? Velthar's voice was confused. Humans have been members of the Galactic Council for 50 years. Earth has been a member, President So Young corrected. But we have not truly introduced ourselves until now. She gestured to Science Advisor Dong Wook, who activated a holographic projector. New images appeared in the chamber, star charts showing human space in detail for the first time. For the past 2 centuries, Dongwook explained, Earth has been developing what we call stellar engineering. We learned to manipulate gravitational fields, trigger controlled stellar collapses, and harness the energy of dying stars. The star charts showed human territory marked with symbols that made the aliens nervous. Every human system had multiple backup plans involving nearby stars. Every human colony was protected by the ability to turn their local sun into a weapon. Every human ship carries stellar manipulation technology, continued Dongwook, not just military vessels. Cargo ships, passenger transports, research vessels, all of them can trigger supernovas if necessary. Fleet Commander Draktos stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. You are saying that every human ship is a potential planet killer? Star killer, Admiral Sung-ho corrected. We do not target planets. We target the stars that support hostile fleets, but the implications... The crystalline representative's voice was high with panic. If every human vessel can destroy star systems, then your species has been traveling through our space with enough firepower to sterilize the galaxy. President So-young nodded calmly. That is correct. We apologize for not mentioning this earlier. It seemed rude to discuss weapons when we were trying to build peaceful relationships. The chamber exploded in arguments and accusations. Some representatives demanded that humans be expelled from the council. Others insisted that stellar manipulation technology be banned. A few seemed to be calculating how to capture and study human ships. President So-young waited for the noise to die down, then spoke in a voice that somehow carried to every corner of the enormous room. Earth understands your concerns. Stellar engineering is indeed a dangerous technology. That is why we have been so careful with it. In 200 years of development, we have never used it against another species until today. Then why reveal it now? Asked Velthar. Because the Void Devourers represented a threat that required a stellar-level response. And because it was time for the galaxy to understand who humans really are. Science advisor Dongwook brought up new images, peaceful scenes of human colonies, research stations, and exploration vessels. Earth is not interested in conquest or domination. We prefer to explore, to learn, to build, but we will defend ourselves and our friends with any means necessary. Friends? The word seemed to surprise Hivemind Node Zix. The species represented in this chamber, President So-young explained. Earth considers all members of the Galactic Council to be friends and allies. We used our most powerful technology to protect you from the Void Devourers. We would do the same thing again. Admiral Sung-ho stepped forward. However, Earth also expects that our defensive capabilities will be respected. Any attack on human territory, human ships, or human citizens will be met with an appropriate response. The threat was polite but unmistakable. The alien representatives understood that appropriate response might include turning their home stars into supernovas. What happens now? Asked Council Prime Velthar quietly. Now we continue as before, said President So-young. Earth participates in the Galactic Council as an equal member. We trade, we explore, we share knowledge that is safe to share. The only difference is that everyone now understands the true balance of power in this galaxy. And if we refuse to accept this new balance? President So-young smiled, and for the first time it was not entirely friendly. Then you would be making the same mistake as the Void Devourers. They thought they understood what they were facing. They were wrong. The meeting ended with a formal vote to establish new diplomatic protocols specifically for dealing with stellar-tier civilizations. The vote was unanimous. No one wanted to risk finding out what would happen if they opposed a species that could destroy star systems at will. As the human delegation prepared to leave, Ambassador Hyunwoo paused at the door and looked back at the alien representatives. One more thing, he said casually. The Resilience was not Earth's most advanced ship. It was just the one we could spare for this mission. Our actual military vessels are considerably more capable. He left the chamber, followed by the other humans. Behind them, the representatives of dozens of species sat in stunned silence, trying to understand their new place in a galaxy where humans held the ultimate power. Outside the chamber, President So-young walked beside Admiral Sung-ho toward their shuttle. Do you think we handled that well? They understand the situation now, Sung-ho replied. That was the goal. And the part about the Resilience not being our best ship? The beam that fired from the Resilience was invisible to most sensors. It was not made of light or energy in any normal sense. It was made of something deeper, information that told matter how to behave. The beam traveled faster than light, crossing 2 light-years in seconds, and struck the red giant star at its core. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. The star continued burning as it had for millions of years. Then something changed deep in its heart. Dr. Junho watched his instruments with the excitement of a scientist seeing the impossible become real. Direct hit on the stellar core. The cascade reaction has begun. What exactly did we just do? Asked Captain Boram. We told the star to collapse, Dr. Junho explained, his eyes glued to the data streams flowing across his screens. Every star is balanced between 2 forces, gravity pulling inward and nuclear fusion pushing outward. We just turned off the fusion. On the tactical display, the red giant star began to change. Its outer layers started falling inward as gravity took control. What had been a stable ball of fire for millions of years suddenly became unstable. Admiral Kyung-mi activated the communication system. All Allied fleets, this is the resilience. Immediate evacuation to minimum safe distance. You have 4 minutes. Evacuation? Council Prime Velthar's voice was confused. Admiral, what have you done? We have begun stellar collapse. The shockwave will reach your position in 4 minutes and 30 seconds. The alien fleets erupted in panic. Ship captains who had been calmly watching the battle suddenly found themselves scrambling to move their vessels as far away as possible. The communication channels filled with urgent orders and frightened questions. All ships emergency jump to coordinates 77 Alpha. That was Fleet Commander Draktos, his voice tight with fear. Crystalline Fleet withdrawing to safety zone. Hegemony vessels executing emergency retreat. Even from their positions 1 light-year away, the alien commanders knew they were too close to a stellar collapse. Stars were the most powerful forces in the universe. When they died, they could destroy everything within several light-years. The Void Devourers were still attacking the Resilience, unaware that their doom was racing toward them at the speed of light. They had never encountered stellar manipulation technology. To them, stars were just background features of space. Large, hot, but not relevant to warfare. They were about to learn how wrong they could be. 3 minutes until shockwave arrival, announced Dr. Junho. The stellar collapse is accelerating beyond our models. This is going to be bigger than we calculated. How much bigger? Asked Admiral Kyung-mi. The red giant had more mass than our surveys indicated. When it collapses, the explosion will trigger supernovas in at least 6 nearby stars. We are looking at a chain reaction across 12 light-years. Captain Boram stared at the tactical display. 12 light-years? That will sterilize this entire region of space. Better than letting the Void Devourers spread to inhabited systems, Kyung-mi replied. Sometimes you have to sacrifice empty space to save lives. The first signs of the stellar collapse reached them as gravitational waves, ripples in space-time itself that made reality vibrate like a bell. The Resilience's instruments screamed, warnings as the fundamental forces of physics began to change around them. 2 minutes to shockwave, reported Dr. Junho. All Void Devourer vessels are still in the, destruction zone. The enemy fleet was massive, spread across millions of kilometers of space. They had no idea what was coming. Their attacks on the human ship continued, becoming more desperate as their weapons proved useless. Then the red giant exploded. Light brighter than 1 billion suns erupted from the dying star. The explosion was so powerful that it could be seen from other galaxies. Matter and energy raced outward at nearly the speed of light, carrying temperatures hot enough to turn planets into gas. The shockwave hit the nearest star in the stellar nursery and caused it to explode as well. Then the next star, and the next. Like dominoes falling in slow motion, each stellar explosion triggered more explosions. Chain reaction confirmed, Dr. Junho said, his voice filled with awe. 6, 7, 8 stars going supernova. The cascade is spreading faster than our projections. The Void Devourers finally realized what was happening. Their fleet, which had been focused on attacking one small ship, suddenly found itself in the middle of multiple stellar explosions. Ships that had survived for millions of years, that had consumed entire civilizations, began to vaporize in the cosmic fire. They are trying to escape, observed Lieutenant Yunji from her weapon station. On the tactical display, the enemy fleet was scattering in all directions, but they were too late and too slow. The shockwaves from the exploding stars were traveling at the speed of light. Nothing could outrun them. The first wave of stellar fire reached the Void Devourer fleet and began to tear through their ships like paper. These creatures that could devour planets found themselves being consumed by forces they could not understand or resist. 30 seconds to our position, announced Dr. Jun Ho. All crew, brace for stellar shockwave impact. Admiral Kyung-mi gripped her command chair as the wave of destruction approached. The resilience had been built to survive this. But surviving the explosion of multiple stars was not something any ship had ever attempted. The shockwave hit them like the fist of an angry god. The ship shook and twisted as gravitational forces tried to tear it apart. The defensive fields that had easily stopped the Void Devourer weapons struggled against the raw power of exploding stars. Energy readings spiked beyond anything the instruments could measure. Hull integrity holding, reported Engineer Dalsu, shouting over the noise of stressed metal and overloading systems. Defensive fields at maximum power. We are riding the wave, said Captain Boram, watching the navigation display. The explosion is pushing us away from the destruction zone. Around them, space itself was burning. The shockwaves from 9 different stellar explosions were combining into a wall of fire that stretched across light years. Everything in its path was being reduced to component atoms. The Void Devourer fleet simply ceased to exist. Ships that had terrorized the galaxy for millions of years were vaporized in seconds. Their organic hulls and strange technologies could not stand against the fundamental forces that powered stars. All enemy contacts destroyed, reported Lieutenant Yunji. I am reading 0 survivors from the Void Devourer fleet. The shockwave passed, leaving the resilience floating in space that had been completely sterilized. Where there had once been an enemy fleet and several star systems, there was now only empty space filled with cooling plasma and radiation. Dr. Jun Ho was studying his instruments with the expression of someone who had just witnessed a miracle. The chain reaction is continuing. 11, 12, 13 stars have gone supernova. The explosion is visible from here to the galactic core. Admiral Kyung-mi activated the communication system. All Allied fleets, this is the resilience. Threat neutralized. Beginning cleanup operations. The communication channels were silent for a long moment. Then Council Prime Velthar's voice came through, quiet and shaken. Admiral, what have you done? We have eliminated the Void Devourer threat, Kyung-mi replied calmly. The enemy fleet has been completely destroyed. You destroyed 13 star systems. We destroyed 13 uninhabited star systems to save thousands of inhabited ones. It was a fair trade. Fleet Commander Draktos' voice was barely above a whisper. How does one ship have the power to destroy stars? The same way one virus can kill a giant, said Admiral Kyung-mi. You do not need to be bigger than your enemy. You just need to understand them better. Captain Boram was looking at the tactical display, which showed the continuing chain reaction of stellar explosions. Admiral, the other fleets are requesting permission to approach. Granted. But they should stay at least half a light year away. The radiation levels will be dangerous for several years. As the alien fleet slowly approached the battle zone, they could see the results of human technology. Where there had been an enemy fleet and multiple star systems, there was now an expanding sphere of superheated plasma and exotic radiation. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. One ship, whispered Hive Mind Node Zix over the communication channels. One human ship did this. Not just any ship, corrected Admiral Kyung-mi. The right ship with the right weapon used at the right time. Sometimes that is all you need. The aliens were beginning to understand that they had seriously underestimated humanity. If Earth could build ships capable of destroying multiple star systems, what else could they do? What other weapons did they possess? What other technologies had they developed in secret? Engineer Dalsu looked up from his damage control reports. Admiral, all systems are stable. We are ready for the return journey to Earth. Set course for home, ordered Admiral Kyung-mi. Our work here is done. As the Resilience began to move away from the destruction zone, the alien fleets followed at a respectful distance. They had come to this battle expecting to fight alongside humans as equals. They were leaving with the knowledge that they had been protected by a species far more powerful than they had ever imagined. Space twisted and tore open like fabric being ripped apart. Dark shapes poured through the holes in reality, bringing with them a cold that went deeper than temperature. The Void Devourers had arrived. Admiral Kyung-mi stood on the bridge of the Resilience and watched the enemy fleet emerge from hyperspace. The alien ships looked wrong in a way that hurt to see. They were not built, they were grown. Organic curves mixed with metallic structures that pulsed like heartbeats. Some ships had tentacles that reached out and grabbed pieces of space dust, feeding constantly. "My God," whispered Captain Boram from his station. "There are so many of them." The tactical display showed thousands of contacts appearing every second. Each Void Devourer ship was unique, like a living creature rather than a machine. Some were small and fast, darting around like sharks. Others were massive, the size of cities, with mouths that could swallow asteroids whole. 53,000 enemy vessels and counting, reported Lieutenant Yoon-ji from the weapons station. She was young, maybe 25, but her hands were steady on the controls. "They are spreading out in a feeding formation." Engineer Dalsu looked up from his console. He was an older man with gray hair and worried eyes. "Admiral, their energy signatures are unlike anything in our database. These ships are not just machines. They are alive." Through the communication system, they could hear the alien allies panicking. Radio chatter filled with fear and confusion came from the fleets positioned 1 light-year away. "By the Crystal Throne, what are those things?" The crystalline commander's voice was high with terror. All fleet commanders maintained defensive positions. That was Council Prime Velthar trying to keep control. "Do not engage until ordered." "The human ship is moving forward." Fleet Commander Draktos sounded angry and scared. "Are they insane? They will be destroyed." Admiral Kyung-mi activated her own communication system. "All Allied fleets, this is the Resilience. Maintain your current positions. Do not approach the combat zone under any circumstances. Admiral, you cannot face them alone." Velthar's voice was desperate. "There are too many." "Understood." Resilience out. She turned off the communication system and looked around her bridge. The crew was small, only 12 people total. They had trained for this mission for years, but training was different from reality. "Dr. Junho, status report on the primary weapon," she ordered. Dr. Junho was the ship's chief scientist. He was thin and nervous, with thick glasses that made his eyes look huge. "Stellar manipulation system is charging, Admiral. We will need approximately 20 minutes to reach full power." 20 minutes? Captain Boram looked at the tactical display. "The Void Devourers will reach us in 5 minutes. Then we hold them off for 15 minutes longer than expected," Kyung-mi said calmly. The Void Devourer fleet had finished emerging from hyperspace. The sight was terrifying. They stretched across millions of kilometers of space, a living wall of hunger and destruction. At the center was the largest ship anyone had ever seen, a creature the size of a moon with thousands of smaller ships orbiting around it like parasites. "They are targeting us," reported Yoon-ji. "Energy spikes across their entire fleet." "Defensive systems to maximum," ordered Kyung-mi. "All power to shields." The Resilience suddenly looked different. Its boring gray hull began to change, revealing hidden panels and structures. Energy fields appeared around the ship, creating layers of protection that glowed with blue light. The first attack came like a wave of darkness. Thousands of Void Devourer ships fired at once, sending beams of black energy toward the small human vessel. The beams could destroy planets, melt asteroids, and consume the energy of stars themselves. They hit the Resilience and disappeared. The human ship absorbed every attack without even shaking. The energy beams simply vanished into the defensive fields as if they had never existed. "Impossible," whispered someone on the alien communication channels. The Void Devourers paused, confused. Their attacks had never failed before. They had consumed galaxies with those same weapons. But this tiny ship had taken their full power and showed no damage at all. "Their weapons are based on entropy manipulation," explained Dr. Junho, reading his instruments. "They try to break down matter and energy at the molecular level. Our shields are designed to reverse that process." "In simple terms, Doctor," said Captain Boram, "they eat things. We do not let them eat us." The Void Devourers tried again, this time focusing all their weapons on a single point. The combined firepower of 50,000 ships hit the Resilience like a black sun. Space itself seemed to crack under the assault. The human ship continued floating calmly in space, completely undamaged. "Shields holding at 100%, reported Yoon-ji. "No system damage detected." Admiral Kyung-mi nodded. "Begin Phase 2. Activate the stellar targeting system." New panels opened on the Resilience's hull. Strange devices emerged that looked like a cross between telescopes and cannons. They pointed not at the enemy fleet but at the red giant star 2 light-years away. "Target acquired," announced Dr. Junho. Stellar collapse sequence is ready to begin. What are they doing? Council Prime Velthar's voice came through the communication system. Why are they not firing at the enemy? From the alien fleets watching in the distance, the battle looked impossible to understand. The human ship was just sitting there, taking damage that should have destroyed entire planets. The Void Devourers were throwing everything they had at this one target, but nothing was working. Maybe human defensive technology is more advanced than we thought, suggested Hivemind Node Zix. Advanced enough to survive that? Fleet Commander Draktos pointed at his tactical display. They are taking the combined firepower of the largest enemy fleet in galactic history. Nothing should be able to survive that. Then perhaps, said the crystalline commander slowly, we have underestimated humans more than we realized. Back on the Resilience, the crew was working with calm efficiency. They had trained for this exact situation. Engineer Dalsu was monitoring power systems that operated on principles most species had never imagined. Lieutenant Unji was calculating stellar mechanics, equations in her head. Dr. Junho was preparing to do something that no one had ever attempted before. 15 minutes until stellar manipulation system reaches full power, he reported. The Void Devourers were getting frustrated. They had surrounded the human ship and were attacking from every angle. Some of the smaller creatures had moved close enough to try physical attacks, wrapping tentacles around the Resilience's hull. The tentacles simply passed through the ship's defensive fields as if they were made of light. They cannot touch us, observed Captain Boram. Our phase shift technology makes us exist slightly outside normal spacetime. For now, said Admiral Kyungmi. But maintaining this level of defense is using enormous amounts of energy. We cannot keep this up forever. How long can we hold? Long enough. The alien fleets continued to watch in amazement and growing fear. If one human ship could do this, what could a full human fleet accomplish? What other technologies did Earth possess that they had never shared with the galaxy? 10 minutes to full power, announced Dr. Junho. The Void Devourers changed tactics. Instead of attacking the ship directly, they began to attack the space around it. They fired weapons that targeted gravitational fields, trying to create black holes that would crush the human vessel. The Resilience simply moved out of the way. Not fast, the ship still looked slow and ungainly. But it moved in directions that should not have been possible, sliding sideways through dimensions that most species did not know existed. 5 minutes to full power, said Dr. Junho. His voice was getting excited. The stellar targeting system is locked onto the red giant. We are ready to begin the collapse sequence. Admiral Kyungmi looked around her bridge one more time. Her crew was ready. The ship was ready. The weapon that would change everything was almost ready. All stations prepare for stellar ignition, she ordered. In 5 minutes, we are going to do something that has never been done before. Through the communication system, they could hear the alien fleet still arguing about what they were seeing. The human ship has taken no damage. How is that possible? What are they planning to do? Admiral Kyungmi smiled as she watched the enemy fleet continuing their useless attacks. In a few minutes, the aliens would understand exactly what humans were capable of, and the Void Devourers would learn why it was a mistake to threaten Earth's galaxy. Full power achieved, announced Dr. Junho. Stellar manipulation system online. Ready to fire on your command. Fire. The war room on the Zephyrian flagship was the size of a football stadium. Holographic displays filled the air, showing star maps, ship positions, and tactical data. Fleet commanders from dozens of species sat around a circular table that floated in the center of the room. Admiral Kyungmi looked small compared to the other commanders. To her left sat Fleet Commander Draktos of the Hegemony. He was 3 meters tall with dark red skin and arms like tree trunks. His uniform was covered in medals from 100 battles. To her right was Hivemind Node Zix, a pale creature with large black eyes that never blinked. It spoke for billions of minds connected across space. The enemy will arrive in 6 hours, announced Council Prime Velthar. He gestured to the main holographic display. Our scouts have confirmed their position. The Void Devourers are moving through hyperspace toward this exact location. The display showed a massive dark cloud approaching their position. Inside the cloud, thousands of organic shapes moved like hungry fish. Each shape was a ship, but they looked more like living creatures than machines. Some were long and thin like snakes. Others were round with tentacles. All of them pulsed with dark energy. Intelligence reports indicate approximately 50,000 enemy vessels, continued Veltar. Each one is capable of consuming matter and converting it to energy. They grow stronger as they feed. Fleet Commander Dracto slammed his fist on the table. Then we hit them hard and fast. No mercy, no retreat. We destroy them before they can feed. The collective agrees, said Hive Mind Node Zix in a voice like whispers. Overwhelming force is the logical response. We will coordinate our attacks through quantum communication. Other commanders nodded and began discussing battle formations. Some wanted to spread their fleets wide to surround the enemy. Others preferred a direct assault with concentrated firepower. The discussion grew heated as different species argued for their own strategies. Admiral Kyung-mi sat quietly and listened. She studied the tactical displays and made notes on her datapad. When the arguing died down, Velthar turned to her. Admiral, what are your thoughts? How will your ship fit into our battle plan? Kyung-mi looked up from her notes. We will need the exact coordinates where the Void Devourers will exit hyperspace. Of course. We can provide those. And I need all allied fleets to maintain a minimum distance of 1 light-year from those coordinates. The room went silent. Fleet Commander Dracto stared at her with narrow eyes. 1 light-year? That is an enormous distance. How can we support you from so far away? You cannot support us, Kyung-mi said simply. The Resilience will handle the initial engagement alone. Alone? Velthar's voice rose in pitch. Admiral, I think you misunderstand the scale of this threat. The Void Devourers have destroyed entire star systems. One ship cannot stand against them. The Resilience will engage the enemy first. After we are finished, your fleets can clean up any remaining threats. Hive Mind Node Zix leaned forward. The human speaks as if her single vessel can defeat 50,000 enemy ships. This is either confidence or madness. Perhaps both, said a commander from the Aquatic Federation. His translator made his underwater speech sound bubbly. But madness has no place in military strategy. Dracto stood up, his red skin getting darker with anger. This is insulting. You expect our fleets to wait safely in the distance while you win the battle alone? Do you think we are cowards? I think you are smart enough to follow orders that will keep you alive, Kyung-mi replied calmly. Orders? Dractos roared. You do not give orders to the hegemony. We have conquered 1,000 worlds. And how many stars have you destroyed? The question hung in the air like a physical thing. All the alien commanders looked confused. Stars were not destroyed in warfare. Stars were too big, too powerful, too fundamental to the structure of space itself. Stars? Asked Velthar slowly. What do stars have to do with this battle? Kyung-mi stood up and walked to the main display. She pointed to a red giant star about 2 light-years from their position. That star is dying. It will collapse into a neutron star within the next 1,000,000 years. We can speed up that process, speed up stellar collapse. The crystalline representative's voice made a sound like breaking glass. That is impossible. No technology can affect stellar processes. Human technology can. Fleet Commander Dractos laughed, but it was not a happy sound. Now I know you are insane. No species has the power to destroy stars. We do not destroy them, Kyung-mi corrected. We help them destroy themselves. Much more efficient. She returned to her seat while the alien commanders whispered among themselves in their own languages. Most of them looked worried now. A few seemed angry. Some appeared frightened. Hive Mind Node Zix spoke for the group. If humans possess stellar manipulation technology, why have you not shared this with the Galactic Council? The same reason you do not share your quantum consciousness network with other species. Some technologies are too dangerous to spread. But you would use such technology against the Void Devourers? We would use any technology necessary to protect the galaxy. Velthar tried to regain control of the meeting. Admiral, even if what you claim is true, stellar destruction would affect this entire region of space. Our fleets would be destroyed along with the enemy. That is why I asked for a minimum distance of 1 light-year. Your ships will be safe there. Safe from what exactly? Kyung-mi checked her datapad. From the chain reaction? When the first star collapses, it will trigger supernovas in the nearby stellar nursery. The effect will continue for approximately 6 light-years in all directions. The room erupted in shouts and arguments. Some commanders accused Kyung-mi of lying. Others demanded proof of human capabilities. A few seemed to be calculating evacuation routes for their fleets. You are talking about destroying dozens of star systems, shouted the Aquatic Federation commander. The ecological damage would be enormous. Better than letting the Void Devourers consume hundreds of star systems, Kyung-mi replied. This region of space is mostly empty anyway. No inhabited worlds will be affected. Fleet Commander Draktos was pacing back and forth, his heavy footsteps echoing in the large room. I do not believe it. No species has this power. The humans are bluffing to hide their weakness. Then you are welcome to stay and watch, Kyungmi said. But I recommend you do it from a safe distance. Velthar raised his forearms for silence. When the room quieted down, he spoke carefully. Admiral, if you are correct about human capabilities, why did Earth send only one ship? Surely more ships would increase your chances of success. More ships would not help. The Resilience carries everything we need for this mission. Additional vessels would only get in the way. What exactly does the Resilience carry? Kyungmi smiled for the first time during the meeting. It was not a happy smile. The power to make stars do what we want them to do. She stood up and walked toward the exit. I suggest you position your fleets at the coordinates I specified. The battle will begin in 5 hours. As she left the room, the alien commanders sat in stunned silence. Some of them were already sending encrypted messages to their home governments. Others were running calculations on their computers, trying to understand what the human had told them. Fleet Commander Draktos was the first to speak. She is lying. It has to be a lie. No one can control stars. But Hive Mind Node 6 was accessing data from 1 billion connected minds across the galaxy. After a long moment, it spoke in its whisper voice. The collective has reviewed all available information about human technology. There are gaps in our knowledge. Significant gaps. What kind of gaps? Asked Velthar. The kind that might hide exactly what the human described. Outside the war room, Admiral Kyungmi walked back to her shuttle. Captain Boram was waiting for her with a worried expression. How did the meeting go? About as expected. They think we are either lying or crazy. And in a few hours? Kyungmi looked out at the alien fleet spread across space around them. Thousands of ships preparing for a battle they did not understand. In a few hours, they will learn that both things can be true at the same time. The emergency alarm echoed through the massive crystal chamber of the Galactic Council. Representatives from across the galaxy sat in their floating seats, their faces showing fear and worry. The holographic display in the center showed something terrible, dark shapes moving through space, eating entire star systems. Ambassador Hyun-woo adjusted his simple black suit and looked at the display. The human section was small compared to the others. Around him, alien beings with multiple arms, glowing skin, and strange technologies whispered in their own languages. They all seemed scared. Council Prime Velthar stood up on his platform. He was tall and blue with 4 arms and golden robes that sparkled with light. His voice boomed across the chamber through the translation system. Citizens of the galaxy, we face our darkest hour. The Void Devourers have awakened. These ancient destroyers consumed galaxies before our civilizations even existed. They sleep for millions of years, then wake up hungry. Now they are moving toward our space. The hologram showed the dark fleet moving closer. Each ship looked like a mix of metal and living tissue. They moved like a swarm of insects, but each one was the size of a moon. Where they passed, stars went dark. Planets disappeared. Even empty space seemed to get eaten up. Every species must send their full military power. Velthar continued. This is not a request. This is a command for survival. We need every ship, every weapon, every soldier. If we fail, everything we know will be consumed. The alien representatives started talking all at once. Some stood up and shouted numbers. Others activated their communication devices to contact their homeworlds. The Zephyrian Empire will send 10,000 warships, announced General Caxtor, his metal armor clanking as he stood. The Crystalline Collective offers 50,000 combat units, called out a being made of living crystal. The Hegemony provides 25,000 attack vessels, roared a creature that looked like a giant lizard. Even the smaller civilizations promised hundreds of ships. The numbers kept growing. Hyun-woo did quick math in his head. The combined fleet would have over 200,000 ships. It was the largest military force in galactic history. When the shouting died down, all eyes turned to the human section. Hyun-woo stood up slowly. He was much smaller than most of the other beings in the room. His brown hair was neat, and his calm expression had not changed since the meeting started. Earth will send our full military response, he said in a clear voice. We will arrive in 72 hours. Velthar nodded and made a note on his datapad. How many ships will Earth contribute? Our fleet will arrive as promised, Hyun-woo said. He sat back down without giving a number. Some aliens looked confused. Others seemed annoyed. A few laughed quietly. Humans were known to be a young species with limited technology. Most expected them to send maybe 50 ships at most. 3 days later, the alien fleet started arriving at the meeting point. It was an empty region of space near the edge of the galaxy, close to where the void devourers would appear. The sight was amazing. Thousands of ships dropped out of hyperspace every hour. The Zephyrian fleet arrived first. Their ships were sleek and silver, each one 3 kilometers long. They moved in perfect formation like a deadly dance in space. Behind them came the crystalline ships, which looked like flying diamonds that sparkled with their own light. The hegemony brought massive battleships that looked like flying fortresses. Each one had enough weapons to destroy a planet. Smaller species brought fast attack ships, support vessels, and huge carriers filled with fighter craft. Admiral Kyung-mi stood on the bridge of the Resilience and watched the alien fleets through the main screen. She was a middle-aged woman with short black hair and tired eyes. She had been in space for most of her adult life, and she understood warfare better than most people understood their own families. "Impressive show," said Captain Boram, her second in command. He was younger, with an eager expression that reminded Kyung-mi of her own early days in the service. "It is," she agreed. "But impressive shows do not always win wars." The Resilience was much smaller than the alien ships around them. It looked like a simple transport vessel, maybe 200 meters long. Its hull was gray and boring. No fancy weapons were visible. No glowing energy shields. It looked like the kind of ship that might carry supplies or passengers between planets. On the Zephyrian flagship, Council Prime Velthar stared at his tactical display. Numbers and ship classifications filled the screen. Everything looked good except for one thing. "Where is the human fleet?" he asked his aide. "Sir, our sensors show only one human ship, the vessel called Resilience." Velthar's blue skin turned darker. "One ship?" "Check again." "I have checked 3 times, sir. Only one human vessel is present." Velthar activated his communication system and called Admiral Kyung-mi directly. Her face appeared on his screen, calm and professional. "Admiral, where is the rest of your fleet?" "This is our fleet, Council Prime." "One ship?" "You promised your full military response." "This is our full military response." Velthar's 4 arms waved in anger. "This is an insult. Your species promised to help defend the galaxy. And you send one small ship?" "We sent what we could," Kyung-mi said simply. "The Resilience will do its job. Against the void devourers? They have consumed entire civilizations. Your one ship will be destroyed in seconds." Kyung-mi's expression did not change. "We will see." The communication ended. Velthar immediately called an emergency meeting of all fleet commanders. Within an hour, representatives from every major species were arguing loudly on his flagship. "The humans are cowards," shouted General Caxtor. "They want us to fight while they stay safe." "Maybe their technology is more limited than we thought," suggested the crystalline representative. "Perhaps one ship is all they have. Or maybe they think this one ship can make a difference," said Admiral Kyung-mi, who had been invited to the meeting. She sat quietly while the aliens argued around her. "How can one ship matter?" demanded Velthar. "We are facing the greatest threat in galactic history." "Every ship matters," Kyung-mi replied. "The question is not how many ships you have. The question is what those ships can do." The aliens looked at her with expressions ranging from confusion to anger. None of them understood what she meant. How could one small human ship make any difference in a battle that would decide the fate of the galaxy? As the meeting ended and the representatives returned to their fleets, Admiral Kyung-mi walked back to her shuttle. Captain Boram was waiting for her. "They think we are crazy," he said. "Let them think that," Kyung-mi replied. "In 3 days they will understand."